Hello, everybody. I was just out here taking a walk. Wanted to wanted to tell a story of just another part of my ongoing story as a witness, and what part of my family, what some things that took place, and a lot of it has to do with the disfellowshipping situation and how people react to it. Now, what was funny is a lot of other people's stories have to do a lot with how they were treated and how badly certain things went, stuff like that. And and of course, all of that is terrible, and I hate that happened to them. But I can't say that really horrible things happened to me. I mean, I had my own incidences where things weren't real nice or real pretty or anything like that, and I was treated badly at certain points, but I didn't have real shattering consequences because of certain things like that. So, but so many out there have, and I really appreciate their stories simply because I can relate to some of this to a certain extent. It's just simply because of my family. I mean, my family's been long time members of this organization for almost 100 years, so there's bound to have lots of interesting stories, and just ask my mother, she'll tell you a ton of them. But anyway, one thing I had wanted to mention was about one of my older brothers. This was years ago. I was only I think it was about 12, maybe 11, something like that. And one of my older brothers, who was already out of the house, was having a family of his own. And I guess apparently he had messed around, and he committed immorality. And we didn't know anything about it. We knew that him and his wife were having some issues, but we didn't know to what extent that problem had gone, because she didn't have a whole lot of contact, because he was going from place to place. He's a building contractor, so he had jobs every which way. And so this one particular evening, we were at the meeting, and a brother got up and announced that he was disfellowshipped. And I can remember the look on my mother's face. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It actually bothered me, because despite the fact that my dad was a pretty good guy, I really loved both my parents, and he was a pretty smart guy, and he knew the scriptures really well. But when it came down to it, the rock of our family was my mother. And when things come falling apart, she was the one to pick up the pieces and use those pieces to pick up and rebuild. That was just the way she was. And to see her react that way was shocking for us, especially a 12-year-old boy. And it kind of creeped me out, really. But she was shocked, and first thing she did as soon as it got over, she went right on out to the car. My dad was livid, even though he had spent many decades as an elder. This was one of the few times where he was not. There was a couple times during that whole 60-year period that he was not actually serving. So this was just one of them. So he was not an elder at the time, so he had no knowledge of it. And my mom, she couldn't hardly talk. She was like stuttering. She never stuttered before. She was literally stuttering, and all she could say is, "I'm shocked." And it kind of scared me, because I didn't know what was wrong. I mean, she's just over there just saying, "I'm shocked," and she was crying uncontrollably, and she just couldn't. There was nothing you could do to comfort her. And well, one of my older brothers and I were in the back seat of the car, and even that caused us to start crying because, we didn't like seeing our mother like that. But it really shows the consequences of how that reacts, even though you sit there and you think, well, you do something, you pay the consequences for it. Well, that's all well and good, but when you paint it in a picture where you say, well, because of that, you have to totally shun them and can't have anything to do with them and stuff like that. That really has an effect on the family that can't, or that has to deal with the fact that you can't talk to this person anymore. And even though my parents never took that attitude with anyone that was disfellowship, it still had carried that bad vibe, I guess you could say. So naturally, it just had adverse effects. So my father was livid, and I remember he went back into the Kingdom Hall, and I can't even remember how long he was in there. It wasn't very long, but the brother that made the announcement, he came out, and apparently I heard him. He came out and says, "I had no idea. I'm so sorry." And apparently he had told my brother's mother-in-law, who, her family was well known in that congregation, and they told her, but they didn't bother to call my mother. And he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We called, so and so, but we didn't think about you." And my dad sat right there, and we were in the parking lot. He says, "Brother, you know damn well who his mother was. Why didn't you say something?" He says, you owe more than an apology. And I think that was the first time I ever looked at an elder that looked like he had shit on his face. Excuse my language, but that's exactly what he looked like. I mean, he looked like, oh crap, I really stepped in it this time. And he did. And he did. After that, I don't think he said a terse word or anything. He didn't even look askance at us because he knew that he had screwed up royally on that one. But my mom, she sloughed it off, and she just took her a couple of days. And when she finally reached out to my brother and talked to him, and they got some things straightened out, and she was okay. Which, the way she was able to bounce back from things like that is shows me that she has such strength of character. It's not even funny, because I've been messed up by the things I've seen, not necessarily things that have been done to me, but the things I've seen. And this is just one of them. And of course, it took its toll on her as well. But needless to say, the cool thing about it was the fact that my mom and dad were not the type that would say, okay, well, get your act together, and then after that, and then you can come talk to us. They were never that way. They said, look, figure out what you're going to do. And she says, you've got 2 children that you have to take care of, and you need to be there for them. And so you figure out what you're going to do and make sure you take care of those kids. And so he did that. And I can remember we went to see him, and he was so distraught. He was staying with his in-laws. I mean, the whole family was. And he saw us, and he just, I could see him crying. And he was a person, you didn't see much emotion from his face. Very few times did I ever see him do anything like that. And he was just crying, and he grabbed my brother and I, and he gave us a big hug. And he says, no, he told us, he says, no matter what, I want you guys to know I love you. And we're like, well, we know, we understand. And then he and my parents, talked to him. And well, when we left, I can remember him standing on the railing at his in-laws' house and just watching us as we drove off. I remember feeling so bad because he knew he had hurt his family. But the fact of the matter is that something had happened that his actual family was not a part of. And I think that that's what upset my mother so much, because she's has those very strong family ties. It's like, you know what, you do whatever it is you feel like doing. I mean, it's your choice, whatever you want to do. But the thing of it is we're family, and that we still here. So I when I look back and I remember the pain that had caused, but I also knew that, well, I know now the things that my parents were trying to teach us. And that's just because somebody does something you might construe as stupid or whatever, doesn't make them a person not worthy of love, especially not family. And, even good friends, it's like, you want to be there for them. So, what's all this other nonsense that you have to go through? So I think that was kind of the big takeaway I had from it, that the stuff about can't talk to him anymore, can't do this, can't do that, is all a bunch of mess. And for those of you out there that are watching this that have gone through this, have been disfellowshipped, have been taken out of your family's lives, I am so sorry. I really am. I'm so sorry, to the point where I wish that I could take that away. I really do, because I didn't feel it personally. I understand the pain, and I know many of you have had the pain, and that's why I feel so bad, because I know that that suffering really takes a toll on people, even people who are strong, such as my mother. It did take its toll. And now that she's well into her 80s, she has absolutely nothing to do with the witnesses anymore. She didn't DA herself or anything, but she just walked away, and she doesn't go back. And of course, other things had happened since that time. But yeah, even the people that had the best of situations as far as their standing, whether it was within the congregation or how they're seen in the congregation, because apparently my parents were very well respected. At the time, I didn't really understand it. It was just the way it was. And naturally, they were not the type that got abused by anybody. And when something happened that was amiss, it got taken care of. And I'm glad of that, just simply because I was able to experience life without being under total control. I guess you can say we were partially controlled. And that's bad enough. Okay, that's bad enough. So even with the things that I've experienced and the things that I'm bitter about, doesn't hold a candle to what many of you have done. So really, my point with this story is that I really have respect for you all for how you've gotten through this. Many of you have been able to tell your story, and I'm glad that you did. Whether it's if it's helped somebody else or whether it helped you, I'm glad that you were able to do that. And I'm glad that I've been able to tell my story and kind of put my own little twist on things, because everybody experienced things with their own eyes and with different views. So I just wanted to say that I have a lot of love and respect for you all, and I really wish that you have continual healing, and that life begins to be better for you. I really do. So that's all I wanted to say. I just want to share that, and thank you all for your comments, and I hope that you all enjoy the weekend. Super Bowl's tomorrow, so we're going to have fun with that. So you guys take care, and we'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.